Welcome, everyone, to episode 2 of Weeding the Garden of Surrender. In this episode, I'd like to talk a little bit about the why me aspect of grief and trauma and when terrible things happen, and the questioning that we do about those things that happen in our lives that perhaps turn our lives upside down or cause us a lot of pain. It is a normal human condition. I think we are all, as humans, inquisitive by nature. So when some terrible thing does happen to us, and we often do question. We perhaps thought our lives were blessed and we were moving forward and everything seemed to be going really well. And then something terrible happens and we reach a point of questioning because we can't understand. We feel sometimes that we didn't deserve it. And why did it happen? Why did this terrible thing happen to me? Why did this person die? Why did that person break up with me? It's all very personal when you talk about pain and trauma because someone can feel something so deeply that may seem so trivial to another person. And someone can experience a very deep trauma and yet they're not as affected as someone else. So pain is very personal as well as healing. And I think the first thing that we do ask ourselves, the why, is a good place to start, but we can't wallow in it. If we start to question why something happened and we continue to feel this deep pain and the deep questioning and the deep trying to understand everything that happened as if it has meaning, we're just going to keep going in circles. There is no why most of the time. Bad things just happen and we can't control them. We can look within ourselves and think about our thoughts and our emotions and our actions, and that's all we can control. If we start to try to control the outside aspects and try to at least feel that we can control them, we really can't. We can't control other people. We can't control what happens in the world. We can't control death. Really, there's nothing we can control except ourselves. So if we start to focus on how we react to a traumatic event, that's when healing can begin. So it's interesting because when I started this journey of healing, I bought a ton of books. I went online and joined all these groups. I even hired coaches and gurus and people to try to help me figure out how to heal my pain because I had no idea how to do this. And not that I hadn't experienced anything terrible, I had, but it was always easy for me. And part of that was I think I would just bury things, or as I call it, swallowing my sorrow. Instead of dealing with the emotions, I just said, I'm just going to push them back. And eventually you reach a point where you can't push everything back. So you've got to find a way to move forward. I read a lot of books. I was talking about, I'm a published author, so I've got my own books. They all were part of my healing process. And before that, I would buy these books about healing and spirituality and how to deal with your pain and how to surrender, which is a really hard thing to do. And there are well over 45,000 books each year just in that field of, the self-help genre, where people have all their own theories and their own ideas, and they call themselves coaches and gurus, and they can help you heal your pain. And I did that. I read all these books and I did all these workshops. I tried to fix myself and I spent a lot of money. And I think a lot of people do that. But the key really is that you need to look within yourself for your healing, really. And I know that sounds simple. I'm going to talk about this a little bit, and then in a later episode, we'll talk about what that means to look within yourself for your own healing. I think that a combination of things is usually the best answer, and sometimes you need conventional therapy. Sometimes you need what I call spiritual therapy, which, in spiritual therapy, you deal with things in a different way than conventional therapy. And I think it's really important. It deals more with those deeper, perhaps existential questions about our existence and why we're here and why we experience pain. I think those philosophical and spiritual questions are really extremely important, and they're sometimes ignored. So, what does it mean when we start to question the why of everything? Well, we're looking for answers. We're looking for healing. And we go out there into the world. We find all these books to read, just like I did. I did a lot of reading. And you try to figure out what will work for you. Which books will work? Does a bestseller work? Not always. I mean, why is a book a bestseller? I'm going to talk just a little bit about publishing and the whole publishing industry, because I think obviously when they publish a book, the big publishers, there are now, I believe, 5 big publishers. They've all kind of consolidated. They want to make money, so they will choose somebody who's perhaps has written other books, or someone who has this idea that they can market. So it really is all about the marketing and the money. And those ideas that maybe will help others are not necessarily put out there because maybe they're not marketable. I mean, it's the same thing for fiction. If it's not a marketable person or a marketable title, they're not going to publish your book. Even with the help of an agent, it's going to be really difficult. So a lot of what is put out there is just regurgitated, and just other people's thoughts that some people have put together in a slightly different way. So you're going to have a hard time if you try to read all these books. You're going to get some helpful advice here and there. And I believe that a lot of that, while it is helpful, you don't have to follow just one book, because I think for some people that's not going to work. You need to pull in from different areas and different aspects what works for you for your own healing. So as you read, as you explore, as you research online, you have to understand that part. You might get overwhelmed. So you need to understand what it is that you need for your own healing. And what I think is that it is all within you, and you basically have to just go within and get that all out. Now, there are really many methods to do this. The one that I talk about most frequently was the one that worked for me, and it was a method of reflective journaling and meditation. When we meditate, we can reach a state of connecting to our inner selves. And as we reach our inner selves, we can then bring out things that maybe we don't want to talk about in the real world, and things that are cause us pain, and things that we're afraid of. And things that we are afraid of are those things that are really well hidden in there. So meditation, whatever that means to you, it doesn't mean you have to sit and quietly and listen to music. You can walk in nature, you can paint, you can do absolutely anything, even cooking. And that can bring you in a state where you can maybe go sit down and write afterwards. This is what worked for me. So I would do the meditative part and then sit down and write. And it just started to flow. Sometimes I would give myself prompts and say, okay, this is what I want to talk about today. And I would start, small. Okay, what is a fear? What am I really afraid of? And I didn't always know that right away. It took a lot of writing and then going back and reflecting on it, maybe a week, maybe a month later, and understanding that I did have this fear. Sometimes I would talk to people and say, "Oh, you're just afraid of this." And I didn't understand that it was also one of my fears. I think we're all fearful. I talk about this in my book, about the fears that we have and how we feel we are alone feeling this way, and we're not. We're almost all afraid of rejection, abandonment, and other aspects. Some of us more deeply than others feel these fears. And that's where you need to get to the heart of everything. So as you write, and it can be fiction, it can be a journaling of your feelings, whatever it is, it helps get those emotions out. And once you get them out there, then you can learn to deal with them. So that while the why me is great, it doesn't necessarily help you if you wallow too long in it. it becomes pitiful. You become in the state of victimhood, and then you're really stuck. And that's when all those weeds can start growing, because you're not really pulling them out and then getting rid of them. They're still there with you. So as we move through and as we begin our healing, we are going to ask ourselves, why me? We are going to ask ourselves, why did something terrible happen? So I think the best way to deal with it is that accept that it's normal. You can say, yeah, I I don't believe this happened to me. It was really painful. Why did this happen? What can I do? And it is good to question it, but don't stay there too long. Once you understand the why me, and I believe the why me is a great pivotal point for some people who are perhaps going through their lives and not even thinking about their purpose or their existence or their spiritual self. That why me state is significant, because once we reach that, we come to a point where we can finally try to delve deep. And so it is a beginning. It is a beginning. So while it's not necessarily a great place to be in, it is a great place to begin in. And as we begin, then we can start to explore the other things that we need to deal with and find a way to move forward. I believe that a lot of healing comes from accepting ourselves and self-love. And that's a tough thing. I don't know how many people can go and look at themselves. Try this exercise. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, I love you just as you are. Look yourself in the eye and say that. It's actually much harder than it sounds for some people, not for everybody, but I think it is really hard to just stand there and say, I love you just the way you are. So that's a hard thing, and it's a hard place to get to. We all make mistakes. We all have fears. We all regret things that we have done. So we are really hard on ourselves. We go through life blaming ourselves for things that went wrong sometimes blaming others, and that anger carries through and affects your self-love in many ways. That's for a later discussion. So I think if we follow these steps of go through the why me and then start looking within ourselves, then we can begin to accept ourselves and love ourselves. I think the most important thing that we need to think about as we begin is that we are protected, and everything that happened is in the past and can't hurt you anymore. So if you want to discuss some of those things, write them down. You're safe. There's nothing, I mean, maybe it'll bring up emotions, but you have to remember that they are in the past. Nothing can hurt you. The past is gone. You're living in the moment, and you're writing down your thoughts of everything that happened, and that past can't get to you. It's gone. It's gone. Living in the moment is an important aspect of also reaching self-love, because when you are in the moment, you are you're living in the now. I kind of repeated myself, but you're living in the now, you're living in the moment. You're not worried about what happened in the past, and you're not worried about what could happen in the future. In the now, you're always flowing, and everything that happens is something that is in your own reality. If you start to explore the past too much and dwell in the past too much, you're going to be stuck in that pain. And if you start to worry about the future too much and about things that could happen if you did the same thing that caused your pain, you're going to be stuck in not really in the now, but worrying about the past and worrying about the future. So I think that's an important thing to remember, is that you staying in the now. And that's not easy. You've got to always work on that. I mean, I get stuck. Sometimes I start worrying about what's going to happen in the future, and I just forget about all the things that are happening now, the things that I am actually grateful for, because the gratitude also helps us be in the present moment. as we look around our lives and say, there are so many beautiful things that are happening right now. Even if you feel that your life is not great, there are beautiful things in your life if you can find them. And that being grounded in the present, then you can work on your past because that the past is gone and there's nothing that can harm you. And you can continue to work on yourself so you can move forward to a beautiful future, which you do not need to worry about. Sure, you can have hope and you can desire some things, but you also have to release the expectations for those things. Because if you start to expect that things are going to happen a certain way, that's not going to work. Nothing ever happens how we want it to. Everything that happens, you can't control the future. First of all, you can't control anything else. So the future that is coming can be changed at any second. Every thought, every action, every word you speak changes the future, as well as everyone else's actions, and they all change the future that is coming. So you have to just release those expectations. Sure, you can hope for things. I believe hope is important, and there's no such thing as false hope. There are expectations that we have. That is what creates what people call false hope. Hope is hope, and those things that we hope for are not wrong. We can hope for them as long as we release the expectation and let the universe do its magic. So as we move forward and think about the why me, I think the most important thing to understand is that there is no why me, because things happen to everyone and everyone deals with them differently. Some things that may seem really simple and not very painful can definitely be very painful for other people. So the whole aspect of the why me, look at that. Look at the why me a little bit and say, you know what, I have no control. Things happen, bad things happen. I can't do anything. All I can do is think about myself in the present moment and what I can do to make my life go smoothly. Myself, I control everything. You have to remember that you control yourself. Even when your emotions are out of control or you feel they're out of control, you do have the control. All you have to do is start working on yourself and you can move forward in a positive way. Thank you for joining me today. Look forward to next time and see you very soon.